had thought that I could teach this wordless melody to you and we could all sing it together, and then I realized I picked one that is not the easiest. So I'm going to sing it through several times, and I invite you to sing along, or I invite you to just let the sound sort of absorb into your body and be present in the moment.
While everyone's getting settled, I just want to take a minute to say a word of thanks to Rabbi Maor for their music this morning, which we'll have the treat of hearing more of in just a little bit, and to Reverend Kirsten for her introduction as well. It is a joy to be gathered in this space with y'all this morning. Last spring, as I was preparing to transition into this new role of Associate University Chaplain, Reverend Kirsten and I met several times to review my job description and talk through how this newly reimagined role would fit into the landscape of the Truett Center and religious and spiritual life at EWAN. One of the things that I was most excited to learn would be a part of my portfolio was this, Numen Lumen. This time carved into our schedules, already set aside on our calendars, that gives us a few moments to lay aside appointments and to-do lists, and instead to drink in the wisdom from members of our community. When Numen Lumen Pavilion was dedicated, this space that we're gathered in 2013, President Emeritus Leo Lambert said this: "Numen and lumen, meaning spiritual light and intellectual light, serve as the university's motto and signify the highest purpose of an Elon education." The significance of gathering in a building and the significance of organizing a program that share this same name, the profundity is not lost on me. It's also not lost on me that an explicit part of my job description is to curate this time and space, and quite frankly, that feels like a monumental task. But I'm grateful to my colleagues here at the Truett Center, both past and present, who have laid the groundwork for curating this time together. If I can be frank for a moment, like College Coffee, Newman Lumen is a university tradition. However, we've struggled to help it garner the excitement and belovedness that so many of us, rightly so, ascribe to College Coffee. And while Newman Lumen doesn't gather the crowds that College Coffee does, what I do think is true is that Newman Lumen's value is better defined by its depth instead of its breadth. In other words, it doesn't gather the crowds in the same way, but the impact it has for those in attendance is substantial, or at least we hope it is. As I've reflected on what makes Newman Lumen special and tried to curate a series which lives up to its name, I've asked folks what Newman Lumen means to them. And they've said things like, it helps me to feel more connected to my colleagues and community. It helps make me more aware of the experiences and strengths from people within our community. Study after study coming through the pandemic has shown us that so much of what has been lost over the past several years is the sense of community and connectedness that some of my colleagues referenced in relation to Newman Lumen. We know that belonging and meaningful relationships are essential for human flourishing. And so to me, Newman Lumen is a space and time uniquely situated to help us reclaim what's been lost over the past several years. And it's a space to help us live into this highest purpose of an Elon education that we all help co-create. The power of this time together lies in the people who share their gifts of words and song. And it lies in those of us who make ourselves available to receive these gifts. And so in thinking about the theme for Newman Lumen this year, we wanted something that empowered speakers and musicians to share the wisdom and gifts that are unique to their lived experiences. We're hopeful that me, in my own words, will do just this. We hope that this theme offers speakers the opportunity to share stories of their lives which make them them. We hope that this theme enables us who are recipients of this gift to learn from and connect to our community in meaningful ways, and in doing so, to begin to live into this highest purpose of an Elon education. And so to start us off on this theme of me in my own words, I'd like to share a story from my first class as an undergrad at Elon University some 12 years ago. It's not a story that I'm particularly proud of, but I think in hindsight that it has been crucial in bringing me to this place today. It happened in the large lecture hall over on the first floor of Lindner in Dr. David Fletcher's Europe in the 14 and 1500s course. Not surprisingly, this course included the study of several key figures from the Protestant Reformation. As the daughter and granddaughter of Lutheran pastors, and as a lifelong Lutheran myself, I thought to myself that this portion of the course would be a breeze and would give me the opportunity to impress Dr. Fletcher with some of my knowledge. And yet, I could not have been more wrong. In an effort to help us understand the nuance of the Reformation and the numerous social issues that were at play, Dr. Fletcher had us read several of Martin Luther's anti-Semitic writings. And to be honest with you, it was the first time in my life that I had ever encountered these writings. in the course of a single class period, my idolization of a man I'd been taught to put on a pedestal was shaken, and my identity shaken as well. As soon as the class was over, I called my dad, and first I begged him to tell me that there had been some mistake, that either Dr. Fletcher had confused Martin Luther with someone else, or that I was just misunderstanding what I'd read. When my dad couldn't do that, I pleaded with him to explain to me why I had made it through 18 years of my life attending Lutheran churches, completing Lutheran confirmation and catechism classes, and never once hearing how anything about how harmful many of Luther's words had been to Jewish, Muslim, and other marginalized communities. When he couldn't do that either, I sat down in the Lindner Amphitheater and I cried until I figured out what I needed to do next. This would be the first of many experiences I had as a student at Elon in which some piece of my identity I held dear was held up to the light for closer examination. And it was through this process that I realized how much of my formation had been one-sided. This would happen to me again in Dr. Bissell's history study tour, where I'd learned that much of what was taught to me about the American Revolution in my public school history courses centered the stories of the victors and left out the stories of the displaced. It would happen again in Dr. Miller-Dice's Education and Society course, where I'd learn how things like redlining and intentional oversights systemically segregated schools and left communities of color with fewer resources. And then it would happen again in Dr. Carpenter's diverse learning class, where I'd learned that public school classrooms were designed for neurotypical learners to succeed, and by default left those who were just outside the median to fail. All of this is to say that my time as an undergrad at Elon, and arguably all of the time that has followed since, has been a series of learning and unlearning how my whiteness and other dominant identities I hold have informed how I've seen the world, and how, quite frankly, have harmed others in the process. I'd venture to guess that this might be true for many of us in this room. For me, it's been a process of deconstruction and reconstruction, a process of using what I've learned to inform how I show up and interact with the world around me in new ways, a process of learning how to decenter my own story and allow the stories of folks with marginalized identities to guide my work. For me, Dr. Fletcher's class was the domino that tipped, causing me to critically examine, at first disown my own religion, and then reclaim it in a way that centered justice, study it in grad school, and then finally enter into a professional career in religious and spiritual life. I don't know how my life would be different if I'd never taken that class. I like to imagine that another class or another moment of learning would have been that first domino setting off the chain reaction of my unlearning, learning, and doing differently. But what I do know for certain is that each of the stories I've been privileged to hear and learn along my own journey have interwoven with my own and informed my story in ways both big and small. So I'd like to leave you with this quote from the late Rachel Held Evans. It hangs on my wall above my desk, and I'd like to think that it guides my work here at Elon. She says this: "The stories we tell then with our lives aren't meaningless absurdities, tragic in their brevity, but rather subplots of a grander narrative. Every moment charged with significance as we contribute our own riffs, soliloquies, and plot twists to the larger epic. the Holy Spirit coaxing us along with an ever ebullient, and then, and then, and then. So friends, for the gift of listening to just a small portion of my own story, for the gift of holding the story with love and care, and for the gifts of sharing your own stories in formal spaces such as this one and in your everyday lives, I'm deeply grateful. Thank you for sharing the subplots of your stories, which have interwoven into my own life and into the grander narrative, which we all call home. Thank you.
When Reverend Julie told me about the theme for this year's New Moon, my story in my words, this is a song of mine that I wrote, and this is the song that came to mind that I'm happy to share with you. We are